When I was younger, my family went on a road trip to Yellowstone National Park in Wyoming. A journey that etched memories both breathtaking and terrifying into my mind. It was a long drive from our California home that spanned nearly 17 hours in our Yukon XL. Days blurred into nights as we traveled through the sprawling landscapes, seeking rest in motels along the way. One particular night stands out vividly in my memory. We found ourselves behind schedule, prompting my dad to push through the night, eager to shorten our journey. As fatigue gnawed at his senses, he finally surrendered to the early morning and pulled into a desolate rest stop nestled within the dense forest of some unknown flyover state. My brothers and I had long succumbed to sleep in the back seat, cocooned in the warmth of our makeshift blankets. It was around 3 a.m. when I woke up, disoriented and alone in the suffocating darkness of the car. I looked around and saw everyone fast asleep in this pitch-black car, and naturally I felt pretty alone. I tried to fall back asleep, but I couldn't, so I just sat there for a while, boredom setting in. Looking out the window to see where we were, it was pitch black, so I couldn't see anything. Luckily, I wasn't the type to pack light and had brought a couple flashlights in my bag. Being careful not to disturb my sleeping family, I reached into the back seat, unzipped my bag, and pulled out a little plastic, yellow flashlight. It wasn't the brightest, but it was enough to see the foreground of the general surroundings. I put it up to the glass, making sure not to make any noise, and pushed the little switch into the on position. I pressed my face against the glass and looked out. At first, it looked like a normal tree line with some bushes, trees, whatever, but as I scanned the darkness, looking for animals or buildings. Then I noticed this dark shape standing between these two trees in the distance. It looked like the shape of a man, but it wasn't moving, just sitting there. After watching it for a good while and seeing no real signs of movement, I just assumed it was a bush or some kind of natural occurrence. Just as I was about to turn the light off and reattempt sleep, I saw this shadowy shape turn 90 degrees and move behind a tree, disappearing from sight. This scared the hell out of me, and I immediately turned off the flashlight and threw my sweater-turned blanket over my head, shut my eyes tightly, and covered my ears. I was paralyzed with fear and, too full of adrenaline to get any sleep, sat in this semi-fetal position, clutching my flashlight, for the rest of the night. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind, sent tendrils of fear creeping through my veins, a constant reminder of the dark figure looking out at me. As hours passed in agonizing silence, relief flooded through me as my dad's voice filled the car, his words a soothing balm against the terror that had gripped me. With trembling hands, I recounted my ordeal, my voice shaking as I described the creature that had stalked us in the night. As we cruised down the narrow country road, towering trees stood tall and eerie. I couldn't shake the feeling of unease creeping up my spine. My girlfriend, Sarah, sat beside me, her knuckles white as she clutched the armrest. "Are you sure this is the right way?" she asked, her voice tinged with worry. I glanced at the GPS mounted on the dashboard, only to be met with a spinning wheel and a dreaded no-signal message. "Damn it," I muttered under my breath, trying to mask my own growing apprehension. "We should have brought a paper map." Sarah shot me a look that said, "I told you so," but she didn't say a word. Instead, she turned her gaze back to the window, where the dense forest pressed in on either side of the road. We'd been driving for what felt like hours, ever since we took a wrong turn off the main highway. Now, we found ourselves navigating through this forest of trees with no idea where we were headed. Suddenly, a break in the foliage revealed a small clearing up ahead. Relief washed over me as I spotted a weathered cabin nestled among the trees. "Look," I said, pointing ahead, "maybe they can give us directions." Sarah nodded, her eyes brightening with hope. "Let's check it out." I parked the car in front of the cabin, the engine sputtering to a halt. We stepped out into the crisp air, the scent of pine needles and damp earth. As we approached the cabin, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The front door creaked open with a groan, revealing a dimly lit interior. We hesitated for a moment before stepping inside, our footsteps echoing off the wooden floorboards. The cabin was a time capsule from another era, with faded wallpaper peeling from the walls and antique furniture covered in dust. It felt like we'd stumbled upon a forgotten relic buried deep in the heart of the forest. "Hello?" Sarah called out, her voice barely above a whisper. There was no response, only the eerie silence of the forest pressing in on us from all sides. I moved further into the cabin, my eyes scanning the cluttered shelves and faded photographs hanging on the walls. One picture in particular caught my eye, a group shot of us, taken on a hiking trip last summer. But something was off about it. The faces looked twisted and distorted, their eyes hollow and vacant. Sarah gasped as she came up beside me, her hand trembling as she pointed to the back of the photograph. Scrawled in shaky handwriting were the words, "I see you." My heart pounded in my chest as a chill ran down my spine. Who would do something like this? And why? Before we could ponder the implications, a soft whispering filled the air, like the rustle of leaves on a windy day. It seemed to come from all around us, echoing off the walls of the cabin in a haunting chorus. I grabbed Sarah's hand, my grip tightening with every passing second. "We need to get out of here," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. We turned to leave, but as we reached for the door, it slammed shut with a resounding thud, sealing us inside. Panic surged through me as I rattled the doorknob, but it refused to budge. Trapped in this eerie cabin with no way out, I felt a sense of dread unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Sarah's breath came in short, ragged gasps as she pressed herself against the wall, her eyes wide with terror. "What's happening?" she whispered, her voice trembling with fear. I had no answers, only a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that we were not alone in this cabin, that something sinister lurked in the shadows, waiting to reveal itself. Just then, a low, guttural growl echoed through the darkness, sending shivers down my spine. I fumbled for my phone, the weak glow of the screen offering little comfort in the face of the unknown. But before I could dial for help, the lights flickered and died, plunging us into total darkness. I reached out blindly, my hands searching for Sarah in the blackness. "Stay close," I whispered, my voice barely audible over the pounding of my own heart. And then, from somewhere in the depths of the cabin, came a voice, a raspy whisper that seemed to slither through the air. "We've been waiting for you," it said, making me freeze. Waiting for so long. At that moment, I knew we were not dealing with something human. We were faced with forces beyond our comprehension, trapped in a nightmare from which there might be no escape. But as the whispers grew louder and the darkness closed in around us, I knew one thing for certain: we were not alone in the whispering woods. We tried the door again, and this time it opened. We got the hell out of there as fast as we could. We jumped in the car and just kept driving the same way back without looking back. I don't know who or what was in that old cabin, and I hope to never find out. The road stretched out before us, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through the desolate landscape. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the barren fields. My friends and I were on a cross-country road trip, seeking adventure and escape from the monotony of everyday life. Little did we know, our journey was about to take a chilling turn. As we cruised down the highway, we spotted a figure up ahead, thumb extended in the universal gesture of a hitchhiker. Against our better judgment, we decided to pull over and offer the stranger a ride. He climbed into the back seat with a grateful smile, his eyes hidden behind dark sunglasses. "Thanks for stopping," he said, his voice soft and strangely soothing. "Where are you headed?" I asked, trying to make conversation. "Anywhere but here," he replied cryptically. We exchanged nervous glances but brushed off our unease, chalking it up to the quirks of a stranger. As we drove, the hitchhiker grew increasingly talkative, sharing snippets of his life and dropping cryptic hints about the future. "You're on a journey, aren't you?" he said, his gaze fixed on the road ahead. "Yeah, we're traveling across the country," my friend replied, exchanging a puzzled glance with me. The hitchhiker nodded knowingly. "Be careful," he said. "The road ahead is filled with danger." We laughed nervously, dismissing his words as the ramblings of a lonely traveler. But as the miles passed, his words echoed in my mind, a nagging sense of unease settling in the pit of my stomach. As night fell, we decided to pull over and find a hotel for the night. The hitchhiker offered to chip in for a room, but we politely declined, eager to put some distance between ourselves and him. We gave him farewell and watched as he disappeared into the darkness, his figure swallowed up by the night. That night, sleep eluded me, haunted by the hitchhiker's ominous warnings. I tossed and turned, my mind racing with thoughts of what he said. When morning finally came, we packed up our belongings and hit the road once more, determined to put the strange encounter behind us. But fate had other plans. As we drove, a thick fog descended, obscuring our vision and slowing our progress to a crawl. Panic set in as we struggled to navigate the treacherous road ahead. Suddenly, a figure loomed out of the mist, sending us careening off the road and into a ditch. Shaken but unhurt, we stumbled out of the car, our hearts pounding in our chests. As we surveyed the damage, the hitchhiker's words echoed in my mind, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked around every corner. Hours passed before help arrived, a passing motorist stopping to offer assistance. With their help, we managed to tow the car out of the ditch and limp into the nearest town for repairs. But the encounter left us shaken, our nerves frayed, and our sense of security shattered. From that day on, the hitchhiker's prophecy hung over us like a dark cloud, casting a spell over our once carefree journey. We traveled in silence, each lost in our own thoughts, haunted by the specter of what could have been. In the end, it was a relief to finally reach our destination, to put an end to our nightmare on wheels. But the memory of the hitchhiker's chilling words would stay with me long after the road had faded into memory, a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the dangers that lurked in the shadows. As we cruised down the long, winding highway, the setting sun cast a warm glow over the rugged landscape. My friends and I were on a road trip, from New York to Rhode Island. Little did we know, our journey would take a dark and unexpected turn. The road stretched endlessly ahead, flanked by towering trees that seemed to lean in ominously as if whispering secrets to one another. Despite the picturesque scenery, a sense of unease gnawed at the edges of my mind. There was something unsettling about the isolation of this desolate stretch of highway. Suddenly, a sign loomed into view, announcing the presence of a town up ahead. Relieved, we eagerly anticipated a chance to stretch our legs and grab a bite to eat. But as we approached, a chill swept through the car. The town appeared deserted, its buildings weathered and worn. "Should we keep going?" my friend Emma asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. But curiosity got the best of us, and we decided to explore the town, hoping to find some semblance of life amid the eerie silence. Pulling into the main street, we were greeted by rows of abandoned storefronts, their windows boarded up and doors barricaded shut. It was as if time had stood still in this forgotten corner of the world. We parked the car and ventured out onto the deserted street, our footsteps echoing in the stillness. A sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air, prickling the hairs on the back of my neck. "Anyone else getting major Twilight Zone vibes?" joked Mike, trying to lighten the mood. But none of us were laughing. There was something undeniably eerie about this place, something that sent shivers down our spines. As we wandered deeper into the heart of the town, we noticed strange symbols etched into the walls of the buildings, symbols that seemed to pulse with an otherworldly energy. The air grew colder, and a sense of dread settled over us like a suffocating blanket. "We should get out of here," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But before we could retreat to the safety of our car, we heard it, the sound of footsteps echoing down the empty street. We froze, our hearts pounding in our chests, as a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a woman, her face obscured by the darkness, her eyes gleaming like twin orbs of fire. She beckoned to us with a skeletal hand, her voice a low, haunting whisper. "Leave this place," she said, her words sending a chill down my spine. "Before it's too late." With trembling limbs, we turned and fled, the sound of her laughter echoing in our ears as we raced back to the safety of our car. But our ordeal was far from over. As we sped away from the town, the landscape seemed to shift and warp around us, as if reality itself was unraveling at the seams. The road stretched endlessly ahead, leading us deeper into the heart of darkness. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the town vanished from view, leaving us stranded in the middle of nowhere, our minds reeling from the horrors we had witnessed. To this day, I can still hear the whispers of the woman in the darkness, her warning echoing in my ears like a ghostly refrain. And I know, deep down, that we were lucky to escape with our lives. But sometimes, late at night, when sleep eludes me and the shadows dance at the edges of my vision, I wonder what other horrors lurk in the forgotten corners of the world, waiting to catch unsuspecting travelers in their web of darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the deserted highway, my friends and I found ourselves in the dark. Our journey started off as a spontaneous road trip to explore the rugged beauty of the countryside, but now, as we navigated the desolate roads, a sense of unease settled over us like a heavy blanket. With each passing mile, the landscape grew more desolate, the trees looming ominously on either side of the narrow road. The only sound was the steady hum of our car's engine, punctuated by the occasional crackle of static from the radio. The GPS, our lifeline in this unfamiliar terrain, blinked intermittently, struggling to maintain a connection. As the designated driver, I tried to mask my growing apprehension, but I could sense it mirrored in the tense silence of my companions. Lisa, sitting in the passenger seat, nervously tapped her fingers against the window, her eyes darting from left to right as if searching for something unseen. In the back seat, Mark and Emily exchanged worried glances, their usual banter replaced by a noticeable sense of dread. "We should have reached the next town by now," Mark muttered, breaking the silence. I nodded, my grip tightening on the steering wheel. According to the GPS, we were still miles away from civilization, yet there was no sign of the familiar landmarks we had expected to encounter. "We'll probably come across a gas station or something soon," I replied, forcing a note of optimism into my voice that I didn't quite feel. But as minutes turned into hours, and the darkness deepened, our hopes began to wane. The road stretched endlessly before us, a black ribbon disappearing into the void. Panic simmered beneath the surface, threatening to boil over at any moment. Then, just when we were on the verge of despair, we saw it, a faint glow in the distance. Heartened by the sight, I accelerated towards it, my foot pressing down on the gas pedal with renewed determination. As we drew closer, however, my excitement gave way to confusion. The glow was not emanating from a welcoming outpost of civilization, but from a makeshift barrier blocking the road ahead. My stomach churned as I slowed to a stop, the headlights casting eerie shadows on the figures standing guard. Dressed in tattered clothing, their faces obscured by shadows, they appeared out of place in this remote wilderness. Instinctively, I reached for the flashlight in the glove compartment, my fingers closing around its reassuring weight. "Who are they?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible over the thudding of my heartbeat. "I don't know," I replied, my voice trembling slightly. "But we need to find out." Summoning every ounce of courage, I stepped out of the car and approached the barrier. The figures remained silent as I drew near, their eyes gleaming in the dim light. "Excuse me," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is there a problem?" The figure closest to me, a towering silhouette with hunched shoulders, stepped forward, its movements slow and deliberate. "You cannot pass," it intoned, its voice devoid of emotion. I felt a chill run down my spine at the sound, but I forced myself to stand my ground. "We need to get through," I insisted, my voice tinged with desperation. We're just trying to find our way." The figure regarded me impassively for a moment before gesturing to the barrier behind it. "The road is closed," it stated simply. "But why?" Lisa interjected, her voice trembling. "What's going on?" Before the figure could respond, another voice cut through the night, a voice filled with malice and menace. "Turn back," it whispered, sending a shiver down my spine. I whirled around, my flashlight illuminating the darkness, but there was no one there. The voice seemed to echo from all around us, its source impossible to pinpoint. Heart pounding, I turned back to the figure before me, my mind racing with fear and uncertainty. "We have to go," Mark urged, his voice urgent. "Whatever's happening here, it's not worth risking our lives." I knew he was right, but a stubborn resolve welled up inside me. We had come too far to turn back now, to let fear dictate our actions. Steeling myself, I squared my shoulders and met the figure's gaze head-on. "We're not turning back," I declared, my voice ringing with defiance. "We'll find another way." For a moment, there was silence, broken only by the rustle of leaves in the night breeze. Then, without warning, the figure stepped aside, their movements fluid and graceful. "Very well," the lead figure intoned, its voice echoing in the stillness. "But our warning, the road ahead is fraught with danger. Proceed with caution, for not all who wander these woods are as forgiving as we." With that cryptic message ringing in our ears, we climbed back into the car and resumed our journey, the barrier disappearing into the darkness behind us. As we drove on into the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that unseen eyes followed our every move from the shadows of the forest. But despite the fear gnawing at my insides, I pressed on, determined to uncover the mysteries that lay ahead. For better or for worse, our road trip had taken a turn down a path from which there was no turning back. And as we ventured deeper into the unknown, I couldn't help but wonder what other horrors awaited us in the darkness.